The rain that night didn't just fall. It shattered against the pavement, a relentless, freezing deluge that turned the gutters of Seattle into rushing black rivers. Liam Carter, a man whose life had been a series of closed doors and bad luck, pulled his worn collar tighter against his neck as he trudged behind the diner where he had just finished a double shift washing dishes. He was exhausted, his bones aching with the kind of fatigue that sleep rarely cured, and his bank account was hovering dangerously close to zero. He just wanted to get home to his empty, silent apartment, eat a cold sandwich, and forget that tomorrow would be exactly the same. But as he passed the overflowing dumpsters, a sound cut through the rhythmic drumming of the storm, a sound that was too rhythmic to be the wind and too desperate to be an animal. It was a high-pitched, gurgling cry, weak and terrifyingly human. Liam froze, his heart hammering against his ribs, and squinted into the darkness between the metal bins and the brick wall. There, soaked through and barely visible inside a soggy cardboard box that was rapidly disintegrating, lay 2 bundles wrapped in expensive but ruined silk. If you believe that kindness can change a life and that every child deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this story with someone you love. Your support helps us share more touching stories of hope and redemption. Liam dropped to his knees in the filth of the alley, disregarding the icy water soaking his jeans. His rough hands trembled as he peeled back the wet fabric. 2 pairs of blue eyes, wide with terror and cold, stared back at him. They were identical twin girls, no more than 6 months old, their skin pale and marble-like against the gray backdrop of the storm. Panic, sharp and electric, surged through Liam. He looked around wildly, expecting to see a frantic mother running toward him, but the alley was deserted, occupied only by the shadows and the rain. He couldn't leave them there, not for a second longer. Scooping the soggy box into his arms, he felt the impossible weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders. He didn't think about the police or social services or his own poverty in that instant. He only thought about the heat. He needed to get them warm. He ran the 5 blocks to his small studio apartment, shielding the box with his own jacket, whispering broken promises to the shivering infants that they were safe, that he had them, that he wouldn't let the cold touch them again. That night changed everything. Liam, a man who barely knew how to take care of himself, became a father by the sheer force of necessity. He sat up all night, drying them with his only clean towels, feeding them warm milk from a spoon because he had no bottles, and watching their chests rise and fall. He found a note tucked into the folds of the blanket, ink bleeding and barely legible. "I can't protect them anymore. Please." It was cryptic, terrifying, and final. Over the next few days, Liam wrestled with what to do, but every time he looked at them, whom he named Hope and Faith, he saw a purpose he had never possessed. He knew the system. He had grown up in it, bounced from foster home to foster home, separated from his own brother. He couldn't do that to them. He decided in a moment of terrifying bravery that he would raise them. He moved to a different neighborhood, picked up under-the-table construction gigs to avoid questions, and built a world small enough to hide in but big enough to hold the love he suddenly had to give. 5 years passed, and life was hard, but it was beautiful. Hope and Faith grew into bright, energetic 5-year-olds with curls like spun gold and laughs that could pierce through Liam's darkest days. Liam aged faster than his years. His hands were calloused from labor, his back perpetually sore, but his heart was full. However, the financial strain was a constant noose around his neck. Construction work had dried up in the winter, and desperate for a steady paycheck, Liam took a job as a night janitor at Sterling Enterprises, a massive corporate conglomerate housed in a glass skyscraper that pierced the city clouds. It was humbling work, scrubbing floors and emptying trash bins for people who made more in an hour than he made in a month, but it put food on the table. He told the girls he was a night guardian of a castle, keeping it clean for the queen, a story that made their eyes widen with wonder. The queen of Sterling Enterprises was Elena Sterling, a woman known in the business world as the Ice Queen. She was beautiful, sharp, and terrifyingly efficient, having built her father's company into an empire. But beneath the designer suits and the stoic expression, Elena was a woman living in a ghost story. 5 years ago, a carjacking gone wrong had left her unconscious in a ravine for 2 days. When she woke up in the hospital, her 6-month-old twins were gone. The police found the car, but never the babies. Her stepmother, a cruel woman who wanted the family fortune for her own biological son, had whispered that the carjackers had disposed of them. Elena never believed it, but after years of private investigators and dead ends, her hope had calcified into a hard, protective shell. She threw herself into work because silence was too loud. She walked the halls of her tower late at night, a ghost haunting her own life, staring out at the rain that reminded her of the worst week of her existence. One particularly stormy evening, Liam was in a bind. His neighbor, Mrs. Gable, who usually watched the girls during his shifts, had been rushed to the hospital with pneumonia. With no money for a sitter and the risk of losing his job if he called out, Liam made a desperate choice. He bundled hope and faith into their thickest coats and sneaked them into the Sterling building. "We have to be ninjas tonight," he whispered, turning it into a game. "You stay in the break room, draw quietly, and eat your snacks. Daddy will be right outside." The girls, understanding the gravity in his voice, nodded solemnly. For 3 hours, it worked. Liam buffed the marble floors of the lobby, checking on them every 20 minutes. But as midnight approached, a security alarm triggered a lockdown drill on the upper floors, causing confusion and noise. Frightened by the sudden sirens, the girls ignored Liam's instructions and wandered out of the break room to find him. They took the elevator, pressing the button for the top floor because Liam had told them that's where the Queen lived. When the doors opened, they stepped onto the plush carpet of the executive suite. Elena Sterling was still at her desk, her only light a dim lamp, nursing a migraine and a heartache that usually flared up on rainy nights. She heard the soft patter of sneakers and looked up, expecting security. Instead, she saw 2 little girls standing hand in hand, looking at her with wide, terrified blue eyes. Elena stopped breathing. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. It wasn't just that children were in her office at midnight. It was the faces. They were reflections of her own childhood photos. And then she saw it. Faith was dragging a security blanket, a tattered yellow piece of silk with a distinct hand-embroidered star on the corner. Elena's grandmother had stitched that star. It was the blanket her babies had been wrapped in the day they disappeared. "Who are you?" Elena whispered, her voice trembling. Standing up so abruptly her chair toppled over. The girls flinched, stepping back. "We're looking for our daddy," Hope said, her voice shaking. "We got scared." Before Elena could move, the elevator doors pinged again, and Liam burst out, breathless and frantic, holding a mop handle like a weapon. "Hope! Faith!" he cried out, dropping the mop and rushing to scoop them up, checking them for injuries. He looked up, terrified, to see the CEO of the company staring at him with a look of absolute devastation. "I'm so sorry, Miss Sterling," Liam stammered, pulling the girls tight against his chest. "I didn't have a sitter. I couldn't leave them alone. Please don't fire me. I'll take them and go. We'll disappear." He expected anger. He expected security to be called. He didn't expect the tears streaming down the Ice Queen's face. "Where did you get them?" Elena asked, her voice a broken whisper, pointing a shaking finger at the girls. Liam stiffened, his protective instincts flaring. "They're my daughters," he said firmly, though his voice lacked conviction. Elena walked around the desk, ignoring the social distance, ignoring the grime on Liam's uniform. She reached out and touched the yellow blanket Faith was clutching. "This blanket," she choked out. "I made this. I embroidered this star." She looked up at Liam, her eyes searching his soul. 5 years ago. The storm. They were taken from my car. Please, tell me where you found them." Liam felt the floor drop out from under him. The timeline, the expensive clothes he had found them in, the note. It all clicked into a horrifying, tragic picture. This wasn't a woman who abandoned her children. This was a mother who had been grieving them. Liam lowered the girls slowly, his heart breaking into a million pieces. He knew, in that second, that his time as their only parent was over. "I found them behind a diner," Liam said, his voice thick with tears. "In a box, in the rain. I thought someone threw them away." He recounted the night, the note, the struggle to keep them warm. As he spoke, Elena collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Guttural, raw sounds of a pain finally being released. The girls, seeing a lady crying, did what Liam had taught them. They approached her. Faith offered the yellow blanket. "It's okay," the little girl whispered. "Daddy says the rain stops eventually." Elena looked up, seeing the kindness of the man who had raised them reflected in. their eyes. She didn't see a kidnapper, she saw a savior. She pulled the girls into a hug, burying her face in their hair, smelling the cheap shampoo Liam bought, feeling the life she thought she had lost. The next hour was a blur of emotions. Security was waved off. DNA tests were ordered immediately, though Elena knew the truth in her bones. But the most poignant moment came when the reality settled in. Liam stood awkwardly by the door, his cap in his hand, feeling like an intruder in his own life. I should go, he said, his voice cracking. Let you be with them. I'll figure something out. He turned to leave, fully expecting to walk back into the cold, empty life he had before. He had saved them, loved them, and now he had to return them. It was the ultimate sacrifice. Stop, Elena commanded, her voice fierce. She stood up, holding a hand of each girl, but she was looking at Liam. You think you're leaving? She walked toward him, the gap between their worlds, the billionaire CEO and the janitor, vanishing in the warmth of the room. You saved their lives. You raised them. You wiped their tears and fed them when you had nothing. You are their father, Liam. I gave birth to them, but you gave them life. She took a deep breath, wiping her tears. I lost 5 years. I don't want to lose the man who kept them safe. We can figure this out, together. You don't have to go anywhere. The DNA test confirmed what their hearts already knew, but the legal battle that followed was non-existent. Elena fired the stepmother who had orchestrated the abandonment and saw her prosecuted, but she didn't fight Liam. Instead, she welcomed him. The transition wasn't easy. It was messy and emotional, but they built a new kind of family. Liam didn't return to janitorial work. Elena put him in charge of the company's new charitable foundation for foster children, a job he performed with passion. They bought a house, not a mansion, but a home, where hope and faith had a mom who spoiled them and a dad who kept them grounded. Years later, there was a quiet evening on the porch. The rain was falling again, but this time it wasn't cold or frightening. It was a gentle rhythm on the roof. Liam sat on the swing, watching the girls chase fireflies in the yard. Elena sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder, her hand holding his. They weren't just co-parents anymore. The shared love for the twins had blossomed into a deep, quiet love for each other. Thank you, she whispered into the dark, for finding them. Liam squeezed her hand, watching the girls laugh. I didn't find them, he replied softly. They found me. I was just the one lucky enough to be there. If this story touched your heart and made you believe in the power of destiny and love, please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. We read every single one. Before we end, I have a special request. If you made it this far, please comment. Family is love to show that true family isn't just about blood, but about who stays when the rain starts to fall. In the end, the storm that brought them together was no match for the love that kept them there. Liam, the man who thought he had nothing to offer, realized he had given the greatest gift of all, survival. And in return, he received the one thing money could never buy, a home where he truly belonged.